Welcome back to the show. Exodus Transitional Community is an organization delivering innovative programming tailored to the community affected by the justice system and advocates for a society in which all can achieve social, economic, and spiritual well-being. And joining me now, we're pleased to have the Associate Vice President of Workforce Development Programs at Exodus Transitional Community, Brittany Smith. And Brittany, thank you for being with us.
Thank you for having me.
I gave our viewers a little bit of insight into some of the things that Exodus does, but I'm sure you could do a little bit better job. So for those who may not be so familiar with Exodus Transitional Community, give us a little bit more.
Sure. So Exodus Transitional Community was founded in 1999, and since that time, we've grown exponentially. And our focus and our drive has really been to better support our community in various ways. Currently, our work has been very expansive, and it looks like a holistic reentry program where we are focusing not only on the workforce development pieces, but so much more. So our goal overall is to how do we provide trauma-informed and trauma-sensitive care to individuals coming home from incarceration and to the community to ensure that they can move forward and make progress in their lives. So for instance, our programs include kind of a triage intake program where you come in and you tell us kind of what your needs are, what you're going through, and what you're seeking from us. And we figure out what are the best ways to connect you to the resources that we have internally and potentially externally. And some of those resources are going through our job readiness training program, which is called Walking Through the Wilderness, working with the team, doing this soft skills workshop that allows us to help you address maybe some of the questions regarding gaps in a resume, how to answer the criminal history question that we do know has changed drastically due to the Fair Chance Act in New York. However, we want to make sure that we're preparing our individuals, how to write a resume, how to create a professional email, mock interview skills, and other soft skills to really help individuals along their pathway. And as part of that process, they sign an Exodus contract, and that contract really focuses on several key areas of a person's life to help them build their goals out. So it's not just the focus on, you know, what are your economic goals or your job goals or career goals, but what are your personal goals? What are your spiritual goals? What are your goals for your family? What are your goals for your mental and physical health? And through that, we use that to tailor our services to each individual. And so if you come to us and you have an open case, we refer individuals internally to our Alternatives to Incarceration program to keep people out of the prison system. If you have a history of substance use, we are connecting individuals with our wellness program. If you have a diagnosed mental health disorder, we are connecting you with our Genesis Center. If you are, like all people, just experiencing trauma, we also connected to our Center for Trauma Innovation, which really also just emphasizes the fact that all people experience trauma, and you don't need a mental health diagnosis to have experienced trauma. So how can we better support individuals as they go through that? And with all of that, we are also on the front lines of doing powerful advocacy work to change the systems that continue to incarcerate our community.
So when a person walks through your door, obviously they have a variety of different services that they can really latch on to and be able to be serviced. But when you see the needs right now, particularly coming out of COVID and where we are right now, are you finding a particular trend amongst people who are coming through your door?
I think the largest trend is homelessness. I think we are seeing it across the city, and we know that this has been kind of a consistent issue within New York City, as there's a housing shortage, but you have individuals who are coming home from long incarceration periods who, you know, don't have the foundational documents usually needed to, you know, move directly into apartment, and there's still discrimination in housing. And so we are actually, one of our advocacy efforts is for fair chance in housing, similar to fair chance in employment, to ensure that people are able to get sustainable housing. Because the reality is, without that kind of key piece, it's really hard to do all of the other things. It's hard to, you know, get a job if you don't know where you're sleeping every night, or if you have no place to shower and change your clothes. It's hard to focus on your education and go back to school if you don't know, again, that you'll be on a train or in a park bench the night before. So that is definitely one of the largest challenges. And during the COVID period, you know, we were the partner that worked with the city for the emergency housing program to help reduce the population on Rikers and also support individuals from coming home. And so we've been managing those hotels since that time. And we are actively working to transition individuals into permanent employment, permanent housing. And one of the things that we're also actively seeking is how do we connect to, supportive housing? Because even if we get permanent housing, some of our individuals need continuous care, and how do we make sure they stay connected to support?
Yeah, I know that you work with those with the area of reentry, and that's a big issue as well. Are those persons who are coming in for reentry, are we finding that they're particularly stable when it comes to housing, or are they in much need of housing services too?
They're also much needed housing services. It's kind of a mixed bag. Some individuals have great family support, but they do want to be on their own, right? They've been in a prison for a long time. They've shared cells. They've been in the space that has not been their own. So even going in the family home sometimes is not, the option that they want as their long-term plan. And so we do find that there's still barriers for those individuals that are related to a number of things. Some of it is as simple as not simple, but credit, right? How they may not have never built credit and your credit score is always being run, or they have bad credit from something that happened prior to their incarceration. They don't have any rental history because they've always been on someone else's lease, or they don't have enough money for a first month's rent and security. And again, back to connecting it to employment, it's really hard to move into the employment piece without the housing piece, although we actively work to address both at the same time. And we actively work towards, ensuring people, when they are able and ready for housing, have the financial support through employment.
Yeah. I want to talk about youth for a moment because that's a critical component of our society, and so many times they lack the necessary resources as well. But I know that you do a great job of having an empowerment program that actually services them.
Yes, and I can say that the youth development program is one of my favorite parts of the work that we do, because it really focuses on creating a safe environment where individuals can engage in pro-social behavior and really things that they want to do. So we have, our trauma-informed practices where our staff go through trauma-informed care training and various transformative trainings to ensure that as we engage with the youth, that we're recognizing some of the barriers and challenges that they're facing coming into our space. So we do programs that include transformative mentoring, a specific targeted job readiness approach just for youth, understanding their dynamics may look a little bit different than some of our reentry population, but also bringing in the fun things and the interesting things that they want to do. So for example, we have this phenomenal state-of-the-art music studio. We recognize that a lot of youth in our community are very, very interested in music. And many of them have used, let's say, not the best means to have access to paying for studio time. So one of the things that we want to ensure is that, as a means of engaging in the program, that they have access to this studio, which is an amazing studio. Like, we have an engineer, full sound room, a booth. It is, it's fantastic. And we've had so much increase in individuals coming into the space. And while we have them, then we start to say okay, so let's think about things a little bit differently. Even as you're making your music, we're not going to sit here and talk about the violence that's happening in the community and the violence that has been perpetuated, but how do we talk about changing even that narrative to something that's more positive? What are the things that you want to do, and how do we drive that forward and use music as an outlet? But then also understanding that there's career pathways in music that's not necessarily related to being a performer. The engineers speak to them about what does it look like to become a music engineer? What does it look like to become a producer? What are the different opportunities for you to engage still in this space that you want and make a career out of it, so that it's not just something to do right now. We're using it as a tool for deeper engagement.
Yeah. About GEDs, are you finding a lot of your students coming in need of GED assistance?
We are finding that participants are coming in need of assistance. And one of the things that occurs is, they haven't succeeded in traditional education settings for various reasons. Some of it due to undiagnosed learning disabilities. Unfortunately, our population have some of the highest percentages of undiagnosed learning disabilities. I think at one point I saw statistics that said about 40% of individuals. So we do run GED classes to help individuals prepare to get their diploma. And we're also looking at, but we also have individuals who are currently in school who have requested tutoring within our youth department. So we also want to make sure that we're, advocating and supporting their tutoring needs. And we actually have a few students right now who are in college that I'm really excited about. One who went away to college and was like, well, if I'm back for winter break, like, can I come? And we're like, absolutely, you're always welcome here. We want you to feel that this is a place that you can always return to. So it's really powerful to see kind of the different dynamics and the way the individuals support and engage one another as well.
So, as we look to the programs that you have, obviously they're of much need in our community. Obviously, housing, and you talk about workforce development, you talk about young people. But give me this, because is there a need maybe that we're not paying attention to, that you're seeing in your services, that maybe we as a public need to be paying more attention to?
I think food insecurity is a big need that is under acknowledged within the community. We serve breakfast and lunch, and for the youth department who are here in the evening, we serve a meal later in the day. And we've seen an increase in the individuals who are coming to lunch services, and we're blessed to be able to provide meals. But I think that as we talk about programming, it is a lot of the what are we doing about violence interruption, and what are we doing to keep the people off the street, and what are we doing about drugs, and not recognizing that, with all of those things, there's still other challenges that these individuals are facing. And again, just similar to housing and having finances to support yourself. If you didn't eat this morning, it's really hard to spend your whole day focusing on a program. If you didn't eat this afternoon, or you're not going to eat later, it's hard to say that, like, oh, this program is doing something for me, because you're not thinking about sometimes all of the social emotional support when you have very real physical needs. And so that's why it's very important. And anybody that comes in the door, when they walk in the door, one of the first questions we ask is, did you eat today? And we ensure that we provide the food. So I've had, individuals just walk in the door and say, can I have something to eat? And we're always say, absolutely.
Yeah.
So we're working closely to try to address that, for not just for our participants, but for the community. Our doors are open to the community. So a lot of people may see us as a reentry organization. But when lunch is served at 12 p.m., it's not just individuals who are enrolled in any of our programs. It's the community that also knows that they can walk in and get something to eat because they're hungry.
Brittany, I know that COVID has had its set of challenges for the community. I think one of the things that we learned was that there was an increase, particularly amongst people, because of a lack of socialization, things like that. So drug use, alcohol use seems to be prevalent, and people seem to be going binging, is what one expert actually called it. What have you been able to see in terms of the services that you provided for those who are with substance abuse? Have we seen an increase?
So interestingly enough, I've been with Exodus for about 6 months, so I wasn't here during the full period of what we've seen. But from what I know in the work that has occurred, we did continue to connect individuals, and there was an increase in the connection to our wellness program, which is our substance use treatment program. Sorry, we're literally on 3rd Avenue.
It's okay.
So that's what you're hearing. But at the same time, we wanted to make sure that we were building in support and all of the programs. And that's really where the Center for Trauma Innovation came in, not just specifically looking at traditional types of trauma, but also looking at ways to engage people around trauma. So it's not just talk therapy. It's also, how do we engage people in physical means of expressing their emotions. So we do like trauma-informed boxing, we've done improv, we have an open mic. And the goal for those were to really pull people out of that space of the heaviness of COVID and to keep them into positive spaces, so that maybe we're not turning to the substance use. But if that was the case, it's always important, as we all know, to never demonize an individual, never kind of blame for what is happening, but figure out what the best pathway is for support. And so we've connected individuals to treatment continuously, and that's still our process right now.
Yeah. So for somebody who wants to take advantage of services, how do they qualify, and what do they do?
They just come to the door, 2268 3rd Avenue. That's where our primary intake is done, and it's any open door for us. So if you come in through an alternatives to incarceration program, if you come in through the Wellness Center, if you come in through the Center for Trauma Innovation, you have access to every program at Exodus. So while we do our primary, we have a team that does intakes there. anywhere that you've engaged with any Exodus program, you're eligible for the other Exodus programs. And as I mentioned, like, yes, we're a reentry organization. Yes, we work with individuals who have been impacted by the carceral system, but we also understand that our community has a high percentage of individuals who enter the carceral system. So it's a preventative measure. We don't limit our services to individuals who have been impacted by the carceral system. If we can get you before you get to that point, we're happy to do that as well. So you can come in and still go through the job readiness training. You can come in, especially with our youth, right? It's all about prevention and not just the reactive measure and supporting individuals after any kind of contact with the carceral system. We want to do all of those things. So you can come in, speak to a case manager. Like I said, they'll ask you if you want something to eat. They'll ask you how you're doing today. They ask you if you have a place to sleep, and then they start putting together your individualized service plan and connecting you to the additional resources here at Exodus.
Yeah. Well, Brittany, some great resources that are available to the community, and thank you so much for sharing and the work that Exodus is doing. And glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me, Daren. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.